My ex-wife is forcing me and my daughter to walk down the aisle with his attention-seeking stepdad. I agreed on the condition he pays 50-50 for the wedding. He refused. My daughter is disappointed and going to cut off contact with her mother and stepdad. My ex-wife is accusing me of breaking their family. AITA. So, my 56M daughter 25F is getting married next spring, and I've been looking forward to this day for years. We've always been close, and after her mother and I divorced when she was 12, she mostly lived with me. I've been in her life full time, so I thought I'd be the one to walk her down the aisle, something I'd always imagined. My ex-wife remarried about 5 years ago, and to be honest, I'm not a fan of her new husband. He's loud, craves attention, and tends to overshadow others. At family gatherings, he often tries to become the center of attention, even with my side of the family. For the sake of my daughter, I've tolerated it, but it's been tough. Fast forward to her wedding planning, and my daughter told me she'd like her stepdad to walk her halfway down the aisle with me. I was shocked. I told her that, as her actual father, it hurt to share this special moment with someone who's only been in her life for a short time. I've been there for every milestone, every late night, every tough moment, and to me, it feels unfair to share a moment I always believed would be ours. Adding to my frustration is the fact that I'm covering all wedding expenses to ensure she has the day of her dreams. It's been a significant investment, and while I don't want to sound petty, part of me feels that if I'm taking on this financial responsibility, it's only fair to expect the honor of walking her down the aisle alone. She got defensive, saying she wanted to include him because he's been supportive, but I explained that to me. This is a father-daughter tradition, a moment that reflects our bond. Now she's upset, and my ex-wife has joined in, calling me selfish and accusing me of making this about myself. It's turned into a full-blown issue, and in a moment of frustration, I told her that if she really wanted her stepdad to join, she could ask him to split the bills too. I admit that last comment was out of line, but I felt cornered. AITA for wanting to keep this moment just between my daughter and me, especially since I'm paying for everything. A side note, my daughter revealed that her mom and stepdad suggested he walk her down the aisle, which wasn't her original idea. I thought that detail was worth sharing, as some people might assume this was her decision alone. Update after talking with my daughter and family. I've been overwhelmed by the responses, and I'm grateful for the different perspectives. It made me feel less alone. I received a lot of questions about the wedding costs, so I want to clarify that this is a destination wedding, with expenses for flights, her makeup artist, and a few gifts I'm giving her to make her day special. After reading the comments, I had an open conversation with my daughter. I explained why walking her down the aisle was so important to me as her father, and why it felt hurtful to share that moment with her stepdad. I also apologized for my comment about the bills, assuring her that I wasn't trying to use the money as leverage, and that I only wanted to give her the day of her dreams. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. She was visibly upset, saying I was ruining her day, and didn't understand the pressure she's under to keep the peace. She admitted that her mom has been good to her in recent years and that she fears losing that bond. To her, my ex-wife is her best friend now, something she felt she didn't have growing up. I understand this, as they share interests in things like fashion, and my daughter has always been more like her in personality. My ex-wife and her husband came over, and my sister joined for support. When my daughter brought up the finances, saying she no longer wanted me to pay, and asked them if they could contribute, I braced myself. My ex-wife flat out said she couldn't because she's saving for her son's college fund, her son from a previous marriage. He's 15, so college is years away, but she made it clear that was her priority. I had anticipated this, but watching my daughter's reaction was difficult. She had placed so much trust in her mom, and I could see how this realization hurt her. Her stepdad then chimed in, accusing me of making everything about myself and being a jerk. At this point, I'd had enough. I clarified that I never intended to hold anything over anyone, especially my daughter, but was simply hurt because I'd looked forward to this moment with her all my life. Despite everything, I reassured her that I'd continue covering the costs because my support is about her happiness, not leverage. By the end of it all, my daughter looked heartbroken, realizing her mom and stepdad weren't willing to contribute financially, choosing instead to prioritize other things. She said she needed some space to process it all, and I told her I'd give her as much time as she needs. As for my ex-wife, she doubled down, blaming me for ruining everything, saying I'd driven a wedge between her and our daughter. She accused me of manipulating the situation to turn our daughter against her and her husband. While I'm relieved that my daughter now sees things more clearly, I wish she hadn't learned it this way. Right now, I'm just trying to be there for her in any way she needs. Lastly, I wanted to mention that my future son-in-law had actually suggested to my daughter that her mom and stepdad should pay for the wedding instead of me. Later, he explained that he wanted her to see that her mom might not have her best interests at heart. He's not a fan of my ex-wife, especially after she's made a few rude remarks about his family in the past. I know he did this partially out of frustration with her, but the result left my daughter feeling deeply hurt and betrayed by her own mother. She's always had an open heart and easily trusts, so this has left her more broken than I wanted. Thank you to everyone for your supportive comments. It's helped me through this rough patch. I'll end here and wish you all the best. My husband's affair partner dumped their baby on us. I was going to divorce my husband, but he died due to heart attack after listening about the divorce. Now I want to put up the baby for adoption. AITA. I am a 53-year-old woman, soon to be divorced from my husband, Roger, 47. We've had a rocky end to our marriage due to his affair, which I initially tried to forgive. However, 4 months ago, he brought home the baby from that affair after his girlfriend, 22, showed up at his workplace, handed the child to him, and then, as far as he knows, left for Spain. I let him stay on the condition that I wouldn't have to take any responsibility for this child. I've already raised my own kids, and the last thing I wanted was to care for an infant. But about a month ago, Roger had a heart attack. He survived, but it's left him very weak and unable to care for himself, let alone a baby. Since he's bedridden, he hasn't been able to keep up with things like daycare, drop-offs, and pickups, so I've stepped in to help, but it's not a role I want. I've decided I'm done with this arrangement. I told Roger that I wanted a divorce, and contacted the baby's maternal grandparents, who I happen to know through friends, informing them they had until Friday to pick up the baby, or I'd contact Child Protective Services. They came, took the baby, but were upset, saying I was being cold to a child who had done nothing wrong. I don't view that child as my responsibility. My adult kids, however, think I should stay and care for their father, and Roger's family and some mutual friends are also upset with me. But I've offered my kids the chance to help, even to take on some of the baby care and support their father if they feel so strongly. Both declined, which I think is only fair since I've made it clear that I'm ready to leave this marriage. Financially, I'm fine. The house belongs to Roger, and our prenup states that my savings are mine, so I'll be moving out with enough security. At this point, I feel like I've done what I can. I don't feel I'm being unreasonable, but maybe seeing it written out and hearing from others will give me clarity. Update. I no longer need to go through with the divorce. Roger developed complications from his heart attack and has passed away. I have mixed feelings. He was the love of my life, but he also betrayed me deeply. The child's mother appears to be staying in Europe indefinitely, leaving her parents to take care of the baby. They reached out, asking me what I thought they should do, and I suggested adoption. Not that I would adopt him, but that they consider finding a new home for him. My children and the grandparents thought I was being heartless. I suggested that since the child is their blood relative, they could step in if they wanted, but neither of my children accepted this idea. As Roger's sole beneficiary, I expect that the baby will receive some support from the estate. I am more than willing to allocate whatever the court decides from Roger's estate, but have no intention of using any of my personal money for this. Thank you to everyone who offered feedback and support on this matter. I believe this brings closure to the situation. My best friend of 20 years accused me of sleeping with his fiancée and demanded a paternity test for my child. After the test came negative, I refused to let her host her wedding on my venue that I gave her for free. This led to their marriage being canceled altogether. AITA. My friend Sandra and I have known each other for over 20 years. We're both in our early 30s. She's engaged to a man named Andres, whom I actually introduced her to 6 years ago. Andres and I come from the same region in our home country, so we share similar features. Round faces, deep brown eyes, long, straight, black hair. Enough that, at a glance, people might think we're related. 2 years ago, Andres proposed to Sandra, and since I own a lovely estate in our home country, I'd agreed to lend it to them for their wedding free of charge. The property has 10 rooms and is frequently rented out for events, so this was a generous offer. The only conditions were that they'd need to arrange their own catering and have guests strip their beds before they left. However, 3 months ago, Sandra started becoming distant. Then, about 2 weeks ago, she and Andres came over to our house for what turned out to be a shocking conversation. Sandra bluntly accused me of lying about my daughter's paternity and insisted that she believed Andres could be the father. My husband, Ian, and I were completely blindsided. Sandra's reasoning? My daughter apparently looks a lot like Andres. I tried to explain to her that Andres and I look similar because we're from the same area, but she kept pressing, saying my daughter wouldn't look so much like me if my husband was truly her father. My husband lost his temper, calling her accusation ridiculous, but to try to clear the air, I agreed to take a paternity test, as long as they covered the costs. The results, which came back last Friday, confirmed what I already knew. Andres is not my daughter's father, and a separate test verified that my husband is indeed her biological father. When I told Sandra, she tried to hug me, sobbing, saying her suspicions were justified due to our cultural background. That comment, about women from my country being more likely to lie about paternity, was the last straw. In that moment, I told her the wedding venue offer was off the table and I didn't want her in my life. She left, visibly upset. Since then, Sandra and her mother have been calling and texting, saying they can't find a new venue on such short notice. Sandra even called me in tears, accusing me of ruining her wedding. I still refused, feeling deeply hurt by her baseless accusations and insensitive remarks. Update. Sandra and Andres have broken up. She emailed me an apology and sent a small amount of money as some sort of peace offering. Thank you for reading, and I appreciate all the support and perspective.